will go to the rest of us. This big bad bill is a bust, and I urge a vote.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I yield a minute to my friend from North Carolina, also Budget Committee member, Mr. Chuck Edwards.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This one big, beautiful bill delivers on two of our nation's most urgent priorities: securing our southern border and unleashing American energy independence. It invests nearly $70 billion to finish the border wall, expand surveillance technology, and to hire thousands of new border agents, giving Customs and Border Protection the tools that they finally need to stop illegal crossings, combat drug trafficking, and to protect our communities. At the same time, we're rolling back the Biden administration's reckless energy mandates and cutting red tape to expand American oil, gas, and infrastructure. By restoring the free market and prioritizing domestic production, this bill lowers costs for American families in this way also and strengthens our national security. It's just common sense. Secure the border, empower America with American energy. Let's get this done for our agents, for our workers, and for the future of this country. I yield back.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentlewoman from California, distinguished member of the Judiciary Committee, Ms. Kamlager-Dove.
Gentlelady is recognized for 1 minute.
With this backstabbing billionaire bill, House Republicans are selling their soul and constituents to the highest bidder, Donald Trump. First, he crashed the economy with his temper taxes, driving up the cost of groceries and down our credit rating with Moody's. Now, Trump and Republicans want to steal even more from hardworking Americans to provide tax breaks to those who kiss the Mar-a-Lago ring. They are stealing your food, your health care, your security. My district in LA has the fourth highest Medicaid enrollment in the entire nation. 225,000 of my constituents rely on food assistance to feed their families, and nearly 1 million people in my state live in subsidized housing. My constituents call my office asking me to protect their Medicaid. They don't ask that their life-saving benefits be taken away and given to the 1%. Daylight is the best disinfectant, which is why all of their dirty deeds have been happening at night with this bill. I urge my colleagues to listen to their constituents instead of tasing them at town halls and vote against this dangerous bill. I urge America to keep the receipts on the vote.
Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield a minute to the gentleman from Georgia, a great champion for the Second Amendment and a good friend and Budget Committee member, Mr. Andrew Clyde.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My Democrat colleagues have challenged why the deregulation of silencers is in this bill and why are we removing the $200 tax. Well, under the law, they are firearms and therefore protected by another law enacted in 1791 called our Second Amendment of our beloved Constitution. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, and neither shall it be taxed. Chief Justice John Marshall in 1819 declared that the power to tax includes the power to destroy. If you can tax it, then you can destroy it. You can raise the tax so high that almost no one can afford it, and then you really don't have a right at all. But the Second Amendment is an unalienable constitutional right, God-given, that governments are required to protect, not to tax. The Supreme Court in the Heller decision of 2008 declared the Second Amendment to be an individual constitutional right, further protecting it from taxation, just like the right to speak and the right to vote. This bill simply restores that right from over 90 years of draconian tax. My Democrat colleagues have asked, how did this get in the bill? What was the deal and who asked for it? No deal. I believe the Speaker, with the purest of motives, simply wanted to restore a constitutional right. And who asked?
Time has expired.
Me. I asked. I yield.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Speaker, perhaps it's because it's now past 4 a.m., but I feel like I've entered the twilight zone. We have 13.7 million Americans, at least, who are going to lose their health insurance because of this bill. Another $500 billion worth of cuts to Medicare on top of that. And what is one of their last speakers talking about? A tax cut if you buy silencers. This is bizarre. The reality is millions and millions of Americans are going to lose their health coverage, all to help subsidize tax cuts for billionaires. Oh, yes, and also tax cuts for those who buy gun silencers. And with that, I'm happy to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from New York, distinguished member of the Agriculture Committee, Mr. Riley.
Gentleman's recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm new here, but this bill confirms what I suspected. This place is corrupt as hell. My amendment would have used this opportunity to negotiate prescription drug prices. It would have saved us billions of dollars that we could have used for tax cuts for the middle class. But you know what happened? The drug companies sent their armies of lobbyists here to kill it. Because y'all are fine taking food off the tables of kids, but God forbid you would do anything to rein in the profits of the drug companies. We could have used this opportunity to close the carried interest loophole, make Wall Street finally pay its fair share. That's common sense, but you know where all that super PAC cash comes from. So you'd rather close rural hospitals than close tax loopholes. And you wonder why the American people hate this place. You really want to drain the swamp? Start by killing this bill and working across the aisle to deliver real tax cuts for the middle class instead of your handlers. I yield back.
Gentleman from Texas.
I reserve, Mr.
Gentleman reserved. Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Mr. Speaker, we're prepared to close on this side.
Gentleman from Pennsylvania.
Well, Mr. Speaker, it has been a long debate. I think we started, 48 hours ago or whatever it is by now. But make no mistake about it. This is not a debate that should have been happening in the middle of the night. It shouldn't have happened in the middle of the night last night in Rules Committee. Shouldn't be happening in the middle of the night tonight. Frankly, if I had a bill that I was proud of, I would want to put it on when people are most paying attention. I can understand, however, why there are some folks on the other side who might want folks to not quite pay attention to what's in this bill. You have heard speaker after speaker on this side, however, expose the damage that this bill for billionaires will do. 13.7 million Americans, at least, to lose their health insurance because of devastating cuts to Medicaid and the Affordable Care Act. Another $500 billion more cut in Medicare. All sorts of cuts to nutrition programs, food assistance, education programs, Head Start. The list goes on. And why? To subsidize tax cuts for the top 1%. And for the bottom 10%, we learned in the last 24 hours, they won't even get a little bit of a tax cut. In fact, when all of the components of this bill are factored in, they will be 4% worse off than they were before. And oh, by the way, for the side that always talks about deficit and debt, boy, they really care about the national debt when there's a Democrat in the White House. But then when there's a Republican in the White House, they go about adding more to it. Don't take my word for it. The nonpartisan CBO shows, the bipartisan Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget shows, the right of center Cato Institute shows, left of center group shows. They've actually united the right, the center, and the left, all in agreement that this bill adds trillions more to our national debt. We can do better. As I said at the very beginning, this is one of the most important votes we will ever cast in this chamber. I am proud to stand here on behalf of this side of the aisle and say hell no to this bill. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Texas.
Mr. Speaker, the nonpartisan CBO was off by $1 trillion in projecting the annual deficit back in 2022. They were off by $1 trillion in projecting what the revenue would be. It was record revenue after we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. So I just thought I'd say that for the record. Not the remainder of my time, I want to say thank you to my ranking member. He is a great guy, and he is a good friend and an excellent partner in this endeavor. I know he loves the country. We disagree today. We've disagreed along the way, but we've also worked together to have record bipartisan legislation for the Budget Committee, and I'm just grateful for you. So I want to thank the ranking member, and I now urge the adoption of the bill, and I yield back the balance of my time, which I don't think I have any, Mr. Speaker.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. All time for debate by the Budget Committee has expired. The gentleman from Missouri, Mr. Smith, and the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Neal, each will control 30 minutes. The chair recognizes the gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I yield myself such time as I may consume.
Gentleman's recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Today, we embark on a golden age for working families and small businesses with the one big, beautiful bill. We make permanent the 2017 Trump tax cuts. We add a $1,300 tax cut for families compared to what they are paying this year and halt a $1,700 tax increase. Working families, farmers, and small businesses win with this bill. We expand and make permanent the small business deduction and increase the child tax credit, the standard deduction, and the death tax exemption. President Trump promised no tax on tips, overtime pay, and car loan interest. Hard-working Americans working overtime get up to $1,750 more in their pocket under this bill. Those working for tips get $1,700 more, and families buying U.S.-made cars can deduct their auto loan interest. President Trump promised no taxes on Social Security. And in this bill, we deliver. Low and middle income seniors on Social Security will now have their tax liability erased with an increase in their standard deduction. Under this bill, if you build businesses here in America, you win. Not only do we renew incentives for domestic research and development, we do 100% immediate expensing and the deduction for interest expense. But we also deliver on President Trump's promise to revitalize American manufacturing with 100% expensing for new factories and improvements of existing facilities. Small and medium-sized manufacturers also win with greater tax benefits. We replace bad tax policy with good tax policy, ending Biden-era tax breaks and special interest giveaways to the wealthy and well-connected and China. We hold accountable woke elite universities and tax-exempt organizations that abuse their generous tax benefits. President Trump stopped the flow of illegal immigrants over our borders. This bill will stop the flow of taxpayer benefits to their pockets. After the October 7th attacks on Israel, rampant anti-Semitism stormed college campuses. The Ways and Means Committee investigated. Given the school's massive tax benefits, Jewish students testified about living in fear as administrators failed to condemn the behavior. No longer, some of the worst offenders, colleges with endowments reaching into the tens of billions, will now face the same taxation rate as corporations. The one big beautiful bill gives America a big beautiful raise, with the average American household seeing real take-home pay go up by as much as $13,300. We will save or create 7.4 million jobs and 1 million new small business jobs annually, and unlock 1.5 trillion in additional small business economic growth, including 284 billion in growth just from manufacturing alone. We can boost short-run real GDP by as much as 5.2% and long-run real GDP by over 3%. Renewing the successful Opportunity Zones program will help distressed communities, especially rural ones, by spurring over $100 billion in new investment. Parents win with expanded education savings accounts to choose the education that best fits their kids' needs. Americans, they get greater control over their health care with expanded health savings accounts. Working families, they get better access to childcare and a permanent paid leave tax credit. Supporting the working class is deeply personal for me. I was raised in a single wide trailer in a town of less than 5,000 people. My grandparents didn't ever have running water. The average income in my hometown of Salem, Missouri is just over $24,000. My priority is the working class because the working class raised me. I urge my colleagues, support the one big, beautiful bill. Make American families and workers thrive again. Make rural America and Main Street grow again, and help America win again. I reserve the balance of my time.
Time is reserved. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield myself as much time as I might consume.
Gentleman is recognized.
Well, this big, beautiful bill must be so beautiful that we're debating it at 4:15 in the morning to avoid the scrutiny of the public for a piece of legislation that was altered just hours ago. I would challenge some members on the other side to take an exam on what was added to this legislation before we have a chance to vet it. And my friend, the chairman, he said that his modest youth, how challenging it was. I share a similar story. So you know what? We can both thank Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal for those opportunities. And when he was talking about growth rates, I thought he was going to say, bring back Bill Clinton, because that's where those growth rates came from. So the cat's out of the bag. $2.3 trillion was borrowed in 2017 to pay for a tax cut that overwhelmingly went to people at the very top. So what are we about to do this evening, or this morning, or last night? We are going to borrow $4 trillion, and with interest payments over the next 10 years, $5 trillion to justify a tax cut for the billionaire class. That's what this is about. Or as the gentleman from Kentucky said, and no raving liberal, you're talking about adding $30 trillion to the debt over the next few years. 14 million people are going to lose their health insurance to pay for this tax cut for wealthy people. We got Medicaid, we got food assistance, child care, health care. And you know what? Everybody in this chamber, every member of this house, you should call your local hospitals and ask them to lay out the formula for how their pay works in terms of reimbursements. Overwhelmingly, it's almost 2/3 from Medicare and Medicaid, and this is going to lead, particularly in red states, to closure. So let me give you some numbers I think that are really intriguing, despite that argument that we heard from the other side about how all this money is going to go to people at the lower end. Their slogan ought to be, we're rich and we're not going to take it anymore. That's where this argument is headed. So let me give you some numbers. If you made $1 million last year, you're going to get $81,000 of tax relief. If you made less than $50,000, guess what? Not quite so lucky. But you know what? $1 a day goes a long way, because that's where the numbers land. When they talk about broken promises, I listened to a Republican tonight on TV, a younger guy. He said, well, we reject what CBO has had to say. In the Ways and Means Committee in the tax world, this is scripture. That's how important it is. We might not like the answers we get from time to time. We might be upset about it, but we know that the people who have delivered that are not Democrats, they're not Republicans, they're economists, tax attorneys, and CPAs. So let me just remind everybody on the Republican side about a couple of other things that I think are really important. Most of them supported postal reform. That cost money. Republicans voted for the CHIPS Act. That cost money. They voted for the infrastructure bill. That cost money. 30 of them voted for the Butch-Lewis Act. That cost money. How about the PAC Act for our veterans? That costs money. The Inflation Reduction Act, despite their efforts to deride it, their members are going to groundbreakings and taking advantage of it right now. One piece of testimony the other night in the committee said that there's one congressional district that is receiving $6 billion of investment. Boy, I hate to explain that to my constituents, that I was sending $6 billion back to Washington. I call attention to this because they supported these issues along the way, and now they want an excuse to cut taxes for people at the very top. And that's where these tax cuts are going, to people at the very top. That is not to be denied. I hope as we listen in the next few minutes to the contrast that we would offer if we were in the majority, where we could agree tonight on the very basic fact that I'm going to offer. We could agree with 98% of the tax legislation if they kept the number at 400,000 and fewer. So people under $400,000 would keep their tax cuts, and people at the top would go to 39.6. Those are Clinton-Obama rates, and they work fine for the country. We all have some degree of honor to keep here. How about those soldiers from Afghanistan and Iraq? They deserve our care. Closing veterans service offices? I just did a town hall with veterans. They're astounded by what's happening already. I'm looking forward to the next 25 minutes of debate on this side and the next 25 minutes of debate on the other side, because I'm telling you, they're trying to sell you at 4:22 in the morning a bad piece of legislation. Mr. Speaker, I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Nebraska, Mr. Smith.
Gentleman from Nebraska is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in strong support of this package, which fulfills commitments to secure our border, rein in waste, and strengthen the economy for American families. In the Ways and Means Committee portion of this bill, we build on the success, huge success, of the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act by further increasing the standard deduction, increasing the child tax credit, and further reducing taxes on income earned by family-owned farms, ranches, and small businesses. We also make a landmark investment in educating kids with the inclusion of my bill, the Educational Choice for Children Act, which creates a tax credit for scholarships to meet the needs of K-12 students and puts more parents back in control of their child's education, regardless of zip code. In addition, we are bringing an end to the unauthorized, wasteful, and redundant IRS direct file program, which directly contradicts taxpayers' best interest. This moment is years in the making, and we now have the opportunity to deliver on the job Americans elected us to do in a fiscally responsible way. I strongly urge my colleagues to support this bill. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California, a recipient of the Purple Heart who knows something about veterans issues, Mr. Thompson.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to this big, terrible bill. This bill takes health care away from 14 million people. 9 million people lose food assistance with this bill. And it adds $4.3 trillion to the debt. And that's before the interest on that. This bill also advances China in the race for renewable energy superiority at a time when energy demand is soaring off the top of the charts. All of this to give a tax cut to the Musk billionaire type donors. Mr. Neal talked about the distribution charts. The distribution charts are the coin of the realm. That's what we go by. And you look at those distribution charts, they tell the truth. If you make under $50,000 a year, you get a tax cut of about $260. If you make $1 million a year, you get a tax cut of about $81,500. All of this to give a big tax cut to the richest people in the country. Our constituents lose, our hospitals and our clinics close, our veterans community lose. This is a bad bill. I urge a no vote.
Gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to remind the gentleman from California that a family of four making $96,334, the median income in California's fourth, would see a $2,000 $167 tax increase if the Trump tax cuts expire. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Estes.
Gentleman from Kansas, recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today to urge my colleagues to support our one big beautiful bill. First, let me outline what this bill doesn't do. It doesn't take away Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security from Americans who need it. And it doesn't give lavish tax breaks to millionaires and billionaires. Here's what it does do. It ends benefits for illegal immigrants. Instead of giving Medicaid to able-bodied adults, it prioritizes the benefit for children, seniors, and low-income Americans. It provides a tax credit for seniors, exceeding President Trump's plan to end taxes on Social Security. It provides funding for more border security to keep our country safe. And perhaps more importantly, it extends the pro-family, pro-growth policies from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act that even the New York Times and Washington Post admitted giving tax cuts to middle-class Americans. And how do we know this will work? Because we saw TCJA boost wages, job growth, and tax revenue, despite the CBO's biased and inaccurate scoring in 2017. Mr. Speaker, I urge our colleagues to vote in favor of one big, beautiful bill. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Pallone.
Gentleman from New Jersey,
Ranking member of
recognized for
Energy
2
and
minutes.
Commerce.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. For months, President Trump and congressional Republicans have been promising that they would not cut Medicaid or Medicare. The reality is that Republicans are cutting both Medicaid and Medicare in this bill. They're essentially repealing parts of the Affordable Care Act, and this bill will destroy the healthcare system in this country, and it keeps getting worse with each GOP amendment. The GOP tax scam takes healthcare away from at least 13.7 million Americans so they can give giant tax breaks to billionaires and big corporate interests. It's a shameful reverse Robin Hood scheme. They're stealing from you to give to the rich. And Republicans are stripping healthcare away from people by putting all sorts of burdensome and time-consuming roadblocks in the way of people just trying to get by. The vast majority of people on Medicaid are already working. This is not about work. It's about burying people in so much paperwork that they fall behind and lose their health coverage. And if someone loses their health coverage through Medicaid, this GOP tax scam also bans them from getting coverage through the ACA marketplace. It's just one of the cruel ways that this bill basically repeals the ACA and makes it more difficult for people to get affordable health insurance. Now, I just want to say the Republican bill also makes it more difficult for states to finance their share of Medicaid costs by preventing them from implementing new provider taxes. This will be catastrophic for states as their health care needs change over time and will force them to either increase taxes on their residents or cut healthcare services. And for those of you who say it doesn't impact Medicare, the GOP tax scheme will also cut Medicare. I repeat, Medicare. And it basically a $500 billion cut to Medicare because of the sequestration under the PAYGO. And the Medicare cuts will lead to reduced access to care for seniors, longer wait times for appointments, and increased costs. Mr. Speaker, the GOP tax scam destroys the healthcare system by cutting over $1 trillion, and this bill should be defeated. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Illinois, Mr. LaHood.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in support of the one big, beautiful bill. For the past year, Republicans on the Ways and Means Committee have worked to craft tax policy legislation that delivers on our promises to the American people and will provide rocket fuel to our economy. By making President Trump's historic tax cuts permanent, expanding the child tax credit, expanding tax on tips and overtime pay, delivering tax relief for seniors, permanently expanding the small business deduction, and putting in place the research and development tax credit, and much more. The bottom line is H.R. 1 will give a vital boost for our families, workers, farmers, and businesses nationwide. I'm proud to say that this package also includes language from my bipartisan legislation, the Affordable Housing Credit Improvement Act. I've heard from constituents and local leaders across Illinois' 16th congressional district that have expressed that a lack of available affordable housing is one of the most significant barriers to economic success in their communities and across the country. By expanding and improving the low-income housing tax credit, H.R. 1 will jumpstart the development and construction of affordable housing nationwide, and support the needs of our growing workforce. I urge my colleagues to support the bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, I want to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Illinois whose work in the adoption space is a model for America, Mr. Davis.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. I behold no beauty in cutting and seeing cut the heart out of health care in America. I see no beauty in children not being able to take care of themselves because their parents don't have the resources. I see no beauty in a bill that promotes wealth for the wealthy, decreases services and resources for those at the bottom. It's a bad bill. It's not good for America. I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Iowa, Mr. Feenstra.
Gentleman from Iowa is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and thank you, Chairman Smith. President Trump's one big, beautiful Iowa worker. President Trump promised a manufacturing revival in our country, and Iowa will be the first to deliver it. We restored R&D expensing and 100% bonus depreciation to rebuild domestic manufacturing, creating new jobs and bringing investment back to our country and back to our state. President Trump promised a strong economy, manufacturing dominance, and our big, beautiful bill delivers this for our country and for Iowans. Thank you, and thank you, Mr. President. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from California, Congresswoman Sanchez.
The lady from California is recognized for 1 minute.
The bill that we are debating this morning is an insult to every American who works for a living. American families are struggling. Under President Trump and Republican leadership, they've seen nothing but chaos. Prices for everyday necessities like food, clothing, diapers, and formula keep rising because of Trump's tariffs. Premiums for health insurance, car insurance, and housing are going up, making it harder to make ends meet. Americans are worried about their future. People are afraid about losing their jobs, their health care, student aid, and food assistance. And this bill brings that pain. Almost 14 million people will lose their health care coverage under this Republican bill. And for what? So billionaires can get even richer while the rest of us drown in debt. This is outrageous. Republicans are doling out tax cuts for the wealthiest while destroying the means of survival for hardworking families. This bill assaults those seeking the American dream by stealing tax benefits and services from working people who are paying taxes. It would deny the child credit to 2 million children who live in the United States. Here's an idea. How about you start working for the people that you represent, not your wealthy donors?
Time has expired.
But I guess that's asking too much from people who have lost their moral compass.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. If the Trump tax cuts expire, in the Congresswoman's district, 95,070 of California 38 families would see their household child tax credit slash in half. That is helping your constituents. I'd love to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Oklahoma, Mr. Hearn.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of this one big, beautiful bill. The American people have heard a lot of lies about this bill. The left and their friends in the media have settled for demagoguing and fear-mongering to try to stop President Trump from delivering on his promises to the American people. Fortunately for all of us, the bill that they conjured up just simply doesn't exist. What does exist is a bill that champions working-class families. It strengthens the middle class and provides much-needed support to small businesses. It's thanks to President Trump's leadership on this big, beautiful bill that we have something we can all be proud of. I'd like to thank all of the committees and the chairs who worked on this legislation, but in particular, our chairman of the Ways and Means, Jason Smith, who knew 2 years ago that this might happen, this might occur. And we'd be exactly in this position, and he spent those years ensuring our committee was prepared, educated, and empowered to be ambassadors for the president's tax policies. I urge my colleagues to vote yes, and I yield back.
Before I recognize the gentleman from Massachusetts, let me remind both sides. Direct your comments to the chair as we continue through debate. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I always do, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. I want to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Alabama, whose hospitals I have visited, Congresswoman Sewell.
Gentlelady from Alabama is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong opposition to the one big billionaire boondoggle bill. We are here because, according to President Trump, Elon Musk, and Republicans in Congress, billionaires and giant corporations don't have enough money. We could be working to help Americans deal with the high cost of living. We could be working to make sure that healthcare is affordable for all. But what are we doing? At 4:35 a.m. in the morning, we're preparing to vote on a bill that will provide a $4 trillion tax giveaway to the wealthy, well-connected, and well-off. And how will we pay for it? We'll pay for it by kicking 13.7 million Americans off of Medicaid and cutting $300 billion in SNAP benefits from hungry families. The people that I represent in Alabama's 7th Congressional District are good and honest Americans. They work hard every day. They make enormous sacrifices to support themselves and their families, but they are hurting. They are hurting and being crushed by high costs of living, and they live paycheck to paycheck. Meanwhile, my Republican colleagues are hell-bent on providing and making life much harder for them. It's outrageous. It's simply unacceptable. This is a sad day in Congress. I strongly oppose this bill, and I give this warning. Hands off Medicaid and hands off SNAP.
Gentlelady's time has expired. Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from West Virginia, Ms. Miller.
Gentlelady from West Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I rise today in strong support of one big, beautiful bill. Ways and Means Republicans have worked tirelessly for 2 years, traveling across America and hearing from real people about the impact of the 2017 Trump tax cuts had on them. Working families got more money back in their paychecks from a simplified tax code. Main Street America was able to utilize the small business deduction to weather the storm of high inflation during the Biden years, and larger businesses were able to invest more of their money domestically because of a globally competitive corporate rate. This one big, beautiful bill builds on all of that successful tax policy and then some. This bill gives the average working family a $1,300 tax cut. It delivers on President Trump's promises of no tax on tips and no tax on overtime pay. It makes permanent the 199A small business deduction to keep our economy humming. It provides relief to gig workers by ending the Democrats' ridiculous $600 1099K reporting threshold and reverting back to the time-tested standard of 20,200 transactions. This legislation will undoubtedly make the life of the average American better. And thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I want to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Washington, Congresswoman Del Bene, who really knows something about the child credit.
Gentlelady from Washington is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. President Trump and Republicans love calling this one big, beautiful bill, but it's really one big broken promise. Republicans swore they would lower costs on day one. Instead, families are paying more for groceries, energy, and healthcare bills. Republicans have spent months fighting over how many Americans they're going to kick off of Medicaid and how fast. This is literally a matter of life and death. And for what? Another massive round of tax breaks to pad the wallets of the ultra wealthy and big corporations. A mom from Kirkland told me recently that she was horrified to see what Republicans are doing to these programs. She raised 2 kids with the support of Medicaid, SNAP, and the child tax credit. She said the supports Republicans are cutting help real people live real, productive lives. I urge you to listen to your constituents and vote no on this big, broken promise. I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, this is what the one big, beautiful bill is all about. This is what 77 million Americans voted for. Make the 2017 Trump tax cuts permanent. No tax on tips. No tax on overtime. no tax on car loan interest, and tax relief for seniors. The one big, beautiful bill puts money back in the pockets of the people who make this country run. President Trump promised a new golden age, and House Republicans are delivering on that promise. The American people, they're counting on Congress to get the job done. Let's pass this bill and let's deliver for American workers, farmers, families, and small businesses. I yield 1 minute and 15 seconds to the gentlelady from New York, Ms. Malliotakis.
Gentlelady from New York is recognized for 1 minute and 15 seconds.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. In this bill, we are providing real tax relief for hardworking Americans, for middle-class families, for us senior citizens, not the billionaires like the Democrats claim. We increase the state and local tax deduction, the standard deduction, the child tax credit. The last two would be cut in half if we take no action today. We provide tax relief by including my legislation to provide a bonus deduction to reduce the taxes that our seniors pay on their Social Security income. We fulfill President Trump's commitment to eliminate taxes on tips and overtime, and we stop the return of the alternative minimum tax that crushed middle-class families. We allow Americans to fully deduct auto loan interest on their American-made vehicles, and we help young graduates with student loan debt get reimbursed by their employers tax-free. All of that is for working class, middle class, not billionaires. We also make sure that this bill keeps our borders secure and funds the deportation of criminal illegal immigrants, and we increase and strengthen domestic energy production and security, and we safeguard Medicaid for our seniors, for our disabled, for our children with disabilities, and we crack down on the fraudsters by targeting waste, fraud, and abuse. The Democrats can continue to fight for the fraudsters. They continue to fight for the illegal immigrants, but we're going to deliver for the working families, middle class, and senior citizens. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I remind the gentlelady that the SALT deduction that we offered in our tax bill on a secret ballot would have gotten all the Republicans from New York and New Jersey and California. With that, I want to yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Wisconsin, Congresswoman Moore, who nobody has ever walked away from saying, I think she's undecided.
Gentlelady from Wisconsin is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I'll just say this, that the greatest trick that the devil plays is to convince you that it won't be you who he devours. It will be those others, those so-called illegals, those trans people, the welfare queens, and the boy in the basement who won't work. So you justify slashing hundreds of billions of dollars from Medicaid, undermining the ACA, cutting $500 billion in Medicare, adding trillions of dollars to the debt, facilitating the dismantling of care from hospitals, community health centers, nursing homes to finance billionaire tax cuts. And then the bell sounds and you screech. For whom does the bell toll? It tolls for thee. And Mr. Speaker, I will yield back, but I will not yield my soul. Do not vote for this bill.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Kustoff.
Gentleman from Tennessee is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And I rise today to speak in favor of the one big, beautiful bill. My colleagues and I on the House Ways and Means Committee on the Republican side have been preparing for this moment for 2 years. Mr. Speaker, we have traveled across the country and conducted field hearings, meeting and hearing from individuals, from manufacturers, from farmers, and from small business owners. And the message that we got from them was clear. Make permanent all those successful provisions from the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act of 2017. There is no doubt that when we passed the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017, we ushered in a red-hot economy that created jobs and opportunities for all Americans. It's essential that the House of Representatives pass this bill today to cement a pro-growth tax code and usher our nation into a new era of prosperity for all. The American people in November voted overwhelmingly for this, and now it's our time to deliver. Thank you. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Massachusetts, the ranking member of the Oversight Committee, my friend, Congressman Lynch.
Gentleman from Massachusetts, recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the gentleman from Springfield for yielding. I rise this morning on behalf of our friend and colleague, General Jerry Conley, the gentleman from Virginia, with the hope of infusing this debate with his passion and his wisdom on behalf of the federal workers for whom there was no greater champion. Jerry was especially grateful for the federal workers at the VA and the Walter Reed Medical Center, especially the nurses and therapists and physicians and support staff that cared for our veterans and active military. In all honesty, Jerry was furious at the way the federal workers and veterans are being treated under this bill. He was angry that Donald Trump purged 325,000 federal workers, including at least 3,000 workers at the VA, and that the cuts in this reconciliation bill will require the firing of 80,000 more workers at the VA, at least 27,000 of those workers veterans themselves. While the termination of these workers at the VA is outrageous and disrespectful, it's only half the story, because it is the mission of those workers at the VA to care for our veterans that will be ended as well. We should each of us remember that veterans' benefits are different. They are special obligations taken on by our country, our society, and our Congress. Veterans' benefits are obligations owed to our veterans for courageous service previously rendered. And the promise to every son and daughter who puts on that uniform is that if you come home from service with the scars of war, visible or invisible, we will take care of you and your family. That promise has been maintained throughout this nation's history by Democrat and Republican administration without pause. Until now, until tonight, until Donald Trump signs this bill. Mr. Speaker, this is a disgraceful way to treat both workers at the VA and the veterans they serve. I urge my colleagues to vote against this bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Arkansas, Mr. Westerman, the chairman of the Natural Resources Committee.
Gentleman from Arkansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, for yielding, and also thank you for your leadership, your patience, and your unwavering dedication to put this tax policy and this budget reconciliation bill before us. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in support of the opportunity we have to not only provide historic tax relief for hardworking Americans, but also to spur investments in our economy by developing the resources of our land. This is our unique opportunity to do something truly worthy to be remembered in our day and in our generation. The Natural Resources Committee is proud to have played a key part in this legislation. Our title far exceeds our $1 billion instruction. The Congressional Budget Office estimates it will generate over $20 billion in savings and new revenue for the federal government, primarily by direct royalty and lease fees from the sale of oil, gas, timber, and mined resources, while curbing wasteful spending. But CBO's direct revenue evaluation is only a paragraph in a much larger story. Mr. Speaker, it is impossible to utilize billions of dollars of resources without massive investments in oil rigs, pipelines, LNG facilities, mines, refineries, sawmills, mobile equipment, machinery, workforce development, and the list goes on with the upstream and downstream economic benefits of resource development. Our title reinstates onshore and offshore oil and gas lease sales, holds annual geothermal lease sales, and ensures a fair process for critical mineral development nationwide. We've also directed the Forest Service and the Bureau of Land Management to utilize long-term timber sale contracts. We're putting our fiscal foot forward by using America's resources to generate wealth for America, while restoring American energy dominance and giving Americans the opportunity to make products from America, in America, for America, and the world. I urge my colleagues to join me in kickstarting this new golden age of America by voting yes, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Congressman Beyer, who really knows something about the bond market.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, our dearly departed friend and colleague, Jerry Conley, used to say our job was to comfort the afflicted and to afflict the comfortable. This bill does the opposite. My Republican friends say this act is about helping the working families of America, but nothing could be further from the truth. This monstrous bill strips health care from 14 million Americans. It cuts $300 billion in food and nutrition from working Americans, while giving a temporary head fake to those working on overtime and those working for tips. It actually raises taxes on the poorest 20% of Americans, exactly the folks my Republican friends pretend it helps. The overwhelming benefits of H.R. 1 flow to the wealthiest Americans, the largest transfer of wealth from working Americans to rich in the history of our country. Mr. Speaker, Jerry Conley was a devout Catholic who studied to be a priest, and he and I agreed that the essence of this bill sends the opposite of the message of the New Testament, which is to give our lives to help the poor. With that, I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Moran.
Gentleman from Texas, you're recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, today I rise in strong support of the one big, beautiful bill. This bill is our opportunity to deliver on the promises we made to the American people. It's our chance to put working families, small businesses, and communities back at the center of our economic future. In the 1st District of Texas, the median income is just $62,000. And if we fail to pass this bill, a family of 4 at that income level will see their taxes go up by over $1,100. A staggering 22% increase. That's not just a number, that's 6 weeks worth of groceries. That's money that can be used to fix a truck, invest in a small business, or save for a child's future. But if we do pass this bill, we protect that $1,100 of hard-earned income. In fact, we protect every American's money. At its core, the one big beautiful bill is about more than dollars and cents. It's about liberty and empowering the American people. It's about giving families, workers, and small businesses the freedom to thrive without government taking more of their money. We have the chance in this moment to expand opportunity, restore dignity in work, and strengthen the American dream. That's worth fighting for. Let us not fail in this task. Let us pass the one big beautiful bill. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts with 13 3/4 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the very thoughtful gentleman from Illinois and a member of the Ways and Means Committee.
Gentleman from Illinois is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise in opposition to this bill and in support of America's working families, families who are trying to provide health care to feed their children, to secure their future. My Republican colleagues continue hiding under the cover of darkness as we sit here at almost 5 a.m. in the morning wrapping up. What are you trying to hide, I asked them. The largest cut ever to Medicaid, 14 million losing health care. The largest cut ever to fighting child hunger, adding $5 trillion to the nation's debt, all to line the pockets of Trump's super rich family and friends. Just yesterday, the nonpartisan Congressional Budget Office assessed that the bottom 10% of taxpayers will be poorer because of this bill, while the top 10% will get richer. Not only that, the CBO determined that the Republican plan to explode the deficit will trigger mandatory cuts to Medicare totaling $500 billion. My Republican colleagues are attempting to hide the truth of this bill because they know the pain it will inflict on American families. This is not one beautiful bill. It's one awful deal for the country. I urge my colleagues to oppose the bill. Stand up for your constituents who will be worse off if this bill passes. I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri with 11 3/4 minutes remaining.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Yocum.
Gentleman from Indiana is recognized for 1 minute.
I thank the chairman. Mr. Speaker, I rise in strong support of the one big beautiful bill. The pro-family, pro-worker, pro-growth bill before us. We keep hearing the same tired claims from my friends on the other side of the aisle about giveaways to the rich. They said the same things about the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. But you know what? It wasn't true. Even the New York Times admitted that most payers got a tax cut, but many didn't believe it. Why? Quote, to a large degree, the gap between perception and reality on the tax cuts appears to flow from a sustained and misleading effort by liberal opponents. So I ask the American people, are you going to believe your bank accounts, or will you believe the same people who told you it was a racist conspiracy theory that COVID originated in a Wuhan lab, who censored Hunter Biden's laptop as Russian disinformation, who insisted that the former president was doing cartwheels in the Oval Office? Mr. Speaker, I urge my colleagues to support this bill, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you. I might say that the former president was writing historic legislation in the Oval Office and at least signing the products that came from these committees. With that, let me yield 1 minute to the gentleman from California. California, a very important member of the Committee on Ways and Means, Congressman Panetta.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
This Republican partisan tax bill will be the largest self-inflicted wound on America's working families in our nation's history, with the largest cut in health care and food assistance to pay for the largest tax cuts for billionaires. Now, I get that this bill is about fulfilling the president's promises, but like the president, you can't rely on it for working families, as the bottom 10% would lose basic services so that the top 10% can increase their wealth. What's worse is that in order to pay for this bill, you're relying on not just the cuts, but fabricated economic growth numbers, ignoring costs of the TCJA, and hoping that there's revenues from tariffs. Yet even with all of that, you stick it to our children by adding trillions to our federal debt. Look, not only are our creditors and our allies losing faith in our nation, but Americans watching this tonight are losing faith in Congress. If we worked together, we could have helped working families bring down prices and bring down our national debt. Ultimately, we could have restored faith in this institution. Instead, I'm voting no on this partisan bill because it gives in to the president's politics, it breaks your promise to working families, and it gives up on our promise to the future of our children. Thank you, Mr. Speech.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentlelady from Texas, Ms. Van Dyne.
Gentlelady from Texas is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Over the past 2 years, my colleagues and I on Ways and Means have traveled around the country listening to working families, to small business owners and job creators. North Texans have been very clear. They want relief, certainty, and a tax code that works for them, not against them. Last week, we delivered. The bill that we passed out of committee reflects the needs, the real needs of our communities, and the promises that we made to the American people. It is a strong, common sense compromise that builds on the success of the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. This bill expands the child tax credit, makes the small business deduction permanent, and boosts the standard deduction with a new enhancement for seniors. It restores immediate expensing for R&D and increases access to tax-free health savings accounts. In short, this one beautiful big bill stops the largest tax increase in American history and delivers historic tax relief instead. I look forward to its swift passage and to President Trump signing it into law.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to yield 1 minute to the distinguished gentleman from California, a valuable member of the Ways and Means Committee, Congressman Gomez.
Gentleman from California is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you. Thank you, Richie. So let's get straight. This is one big bill, but it's a bill that steals Medicaid, it steals SNAP, it steals all the assistance from working people in order to give tax breaks to the billionaires in this country. If you're making less than $30,000 a year, you will pay $20 billion more in taxes over the 10-year period. If you make $50,000 a year, you have a 50-50 chance of seeing any kind of change in your taxes, while the billionaire establishment gets a cut of $270,000. This is the biggest transfer of wealth in our nation's history. It is literally stealing from the poor to give to the rich. And they want to talk about how they went around the country to listen. Well, they didn't listen very hard, because what they are doing, the Republicans, are hurting average working people. They are not helping when it comes to housing. They're not helping when it comes to childcare. They're not helping. And when they do talk about housing, it's 20,000 units a year for 10 years. That's a drop in the bucket. So we need our Republican colleagues to actually do something besides the cheap talk and the theatrics of going around the town, but only listening to the billionaires in the end of the day. Thank you.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Missouri.
Mr. Speaker, if the Trump tax cuts were to expire in Mr. Gomez's district, a family of four making $62,008, the median income in California's 34th district, would see a $1,139 tax increase if the Trump tax cuts expire. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Bean.
Gentleman from Florida is recognized for 1 minute.
Mr. Speaker, it's a scary time to be a taxpayer in the United States or those that own a small business. Both are facing a tsunami of tax increases, the largest in U.S. history. But, Mr. Speaker, I've got good news. Help is on the way. The one big beautiful bill is real tax relief for real Americans. It's for those that are paid in tips, hourly workers that are working overtime, for families and seniors who've been struggling under the weight of inflation, and it's for the 91% of Americans who use the standard deduction. The bill expands the child tax credit. It secures our border, enhances education and health savings options. It unleashes American energy. It will encourage production on U.S. soil. Made in America will mean something once more. So buckle up, America, and put your seat in the upright position, because with the passage of this bill, the golden age of America is ready for takeoff. Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, might I inquire as to the time remaining on both sides?
Gentleman from Massachusetts has 10.5 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Missouri has 8.5 minutes remaining.
With that, let me yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Nevada, who is a terrific advocate for the people of his constituency.
Gentleman from Nevada is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and to the chairman. This is no way to govern. In the dead of the night, congressional Republicans are passing this partisan, big, ugly bill for billionaires. Who are you here to serve? Billionaires or the constituents that elected you to bring down costs and to make life more affordable? Your constituents, like mine, rely on Medicaid and public education, veteran programs, SNAP, childcare, Head Start, Medicare. But yet Republicans claim to be for working people, and yet the meager tax relief that middle-class workers and families receive under your plan, about $1 a day, are temporary. But the tax cuts for billionaires and big corporations are permanent. That is a choice. I'm for permanent tax cuts for moms and dads, for small business owners. Who are you here to serve? The GOP budget cuts from the masses to give to the few, to billionaires who barely pay taxes to begin with. I know who I'm here to serve, the 750,000 people who elected me from Nevada, and I'll continue to fight for them to make their lives better, not worse. I urge my colleagues to stand with your constituents and against the billionaires.
From Missouri.
Speaker, let's talk about who benefits from this bill. A single mom, a waitress in Nevada, working long hours. She's raising one child. She's living paycheck to paycheck. She gets a bigger standard deduction underneath our legislation. She won't pay tax on tips on our legislation, and she gets a boosted child tax credit. That's a $4,891 tax cut. Not pennies. That's real money for working Americans. This is what it means to stand with the working class and millions of tipped workers. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Ohio.
Gentleman from Ohio is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. And thank you, Chairman Smith and the Ways and Means Committee, for all the hard work that we put into this legislation. Mr. Speaker, strengthening our economy starts at home. And I'm proud to rise in support of the One Big Beautiful Bill, which delivers much needed tax relief to the American workers, farmers, and families. This legislation builds on the foundation laid by the 2017 tax reforms, allowing families to keep more of their hard-earned money, empowering them to invest in their futures, support their children, and build brighter lives. I'm especially pleased that this bill includes making the increased standard deduction levels from 2017 permanent. Simplifying the tax code has been transformative, especially for working class communities where most taxpayers claim the standard deduction. The guaranteed standard deduction has made tax season faster, easier, and far less stressful for millions of Americans. Mr. Speaker, the facts are clear. Over 93% of my constituents claim the standard deduction. If we fail to act, millions of Americans will see a tax hike of nearly $2,000 per household. Permanency gives working families the certainty they need to plan ahead, whether it's saving for college, investing at home, or simply trying to make ends meet with confidence and greater financial security. I urge my colleagues to vote yes. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Mr. Speaker, let me yield one.
And because this resolution waives the earmark rule, it is not in order for it to be considered on the floor. As I just said, Democrats are not going to sit here and let Republicans jam this bill down the throats of the American people. We are going to fight back, and we are going to fight like hell. Because, Mr. Speaker, this point of order is not just about the fact that this bill has earmarks. Look at who the earmarks are for. Look at who Republicans help and who they hurt. Follow the money. From day one, Trump has demanded that this entire process be about one thing: giveaways.
Line the pockets and stroke the egos of a few petty billionaires. I believe in the promise of this nation. I believe in the possibility that government can do right by people and help us through our most vulnerable moments. This bill is the antithesis of that. This bill is a threat to the lives and livelihoods of so many people. The mood up here is somber. Y'all are gleeful. It's somber because this is shameful. Republicans, we just need 4 of you to be people of conscience to stand up against this, and in exchange, you can save lives. You can look your kids in the eye, and you can say that when everything was at stake, that you had clarity and you did the right thing. I'm not begging you for benevolence. I'm asking you for decency. Do right by the people that sent you here. I yield.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. McGuire.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for you. Will help the middle class American people. If the 2017 tax cuts are allowed to expire, 56,000 small businesses in my district alone would experience a 43.4% tax hike, and over 8,000 family-owned farms would have their death tax exemption slashed in half. I came to Congress to deliver real results, and that's what this bill does. In the defense portion of the bill, $34 billion is allocated for shipbuilding and the maritime industrial base in my district, Virginia, and the United States. This bill delivers on the America First promises President Trump and congressional Republicans made to the American people. Mr. Speaker, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts with 8.5 minutes remaining.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So what I intend to do here is to close my time before I yield to the Democratic leader. And I want to talk a little bit about what I began with. First of all, let me just say as a courtesy and as a member of the Ways and Means Committee for 33 years, this debate should be taking place during the day. And I know the members on the other side feel the same way. There is no reason at 10 after 5 in the morning to be debating a bill of this consequence. It's as simple as that. These were legislative courtesies that we once extended to each other. And there is no reason for it to be playing out at a time when most Americans can't dial in to hear the debate. So there's no getting away from the fact that the Republican Party, the party of fiscal rectitude, the party that has lectured us for decades on spending patterns, who are about to borrow $4 trillion for a tax cut that is overwhelmingly going to go to people at the very top, including the billionaire class. What's troubling about it is that if you look back at these tax cuts, as I noted, $10 trillion of tax cuts since 2021. I'm sorry, since 2001 to the moment. In 2017, it's borrowed money, $2.3 trillion. This is $4 trillion, and when you get done paying the interest on it over the next 5 years, as the bond market reminded us again today, it's closer to $5 trillion. The party of fiscal rectitude. I call attention again to this because we would say that if you kept these tax cuts for people under $400,000 a year, you'd get a buy-in from us. We're okay with that. We object to the idea that people who are about to derive the biggest benefit don't need it. And you know what? In most instances, weren't asking for it as well. The theology that tax cuts pay for themselves is nonsense. We've heard that forever. But it is that continued effort that Republicans have to suggest that no matter what happens, a tax cut should be the most important consideration. 2 wars, Iraq and Afghanistan, and 2 tax cuts during those years? The collapse of Wall Street during those years of $2.3 trillion of tax cuts? Ronald Reagan had the good sense when he found out what the tax cuts meant against spending cuts, he reversed the position during that time. But the current Republican Party subscribes to this notion that you can be for infrastructure, you can take defense spending now that's headed over $1 trillion. You can vote for the infrastructure bill. You can vote for the CHIPS Act. You can vote for postal reform. And yes, 30 members voted on that side for the Butch-Lewis Act. You can do all of these things and simultaneously cut taxes. No, you can't. And we know that. We're in a position to argue, I think, with great force for the American people, because I know what happened. For all their talk about what happened in the tax cut of 2017, we easily won the House the next year. The American people don't buy this because they know where these tax cuts are going and intended to help people at the top when it is really the people at the bottom and then the middle who need help. So hospitals are going to close, children are going to go hungry, healthcare is going to be denied, but the billionaire class is going to pick up a considerable number of dollars. And again, the number that I cited earlier, if you make $1 million, you pick up $90,000 additional dollars. It's almost 10%. And if you make under $50,000, Mr. Speaker, you're getting $1 a day. That's what this tax package means. Defeat this bill, send it back to the Ways and Means Committee, compel the committee to negotiate, and we'd come up with a plan where the middle class would get the tax cuts, and then we would address subsequently the debt that is plaguing this nation. This legislation will take us to $40 trillion worth of debt. And they're going to lecture us on debt. It's the old story. On Monday, they blame us for debt, and on Tuesday, they add $4 trillion to it. So I'm going to reserve what I have left of time. I'm finished, but I will yield at the appropriate moment to the Democratic leader. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you for the fair manner in which you did this as well.
Gentleman reserves his time. Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 30 seconds to the gentleman from New York, Mr. Lawler.
Gentleman from New York is recognized for 30 seconds.
Mr. Speaker, when I ran for Congress, I said I would never support a tax bill that did not adequately lift the cap on salt. This bill does that. It increases the cap on salt by 300%. And I would remind my Democratic colleagues, when they had full control in Washington, they lifted the cap on salt by exactly $0. Zilch, zip, nada. Not $1 of increase in tax relief for hardworking New Yorkers. So to all my New York colleagues on the other side of the aisle, before you speak out and say that you don't support a 300% increase on the cap on salt, the fact is that this bill adequately addresses the cap on salt and provides tax relief to hardworking middle-class families.
Gentleman's time has expired. Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I had not intended to rebut, Mr. Speaker. However, our tax bill had an $80,000 cap on salt, and it passed the House of Representatives.
Gentleman.
I reserve my time.
Gentleman's time is reserved. Gentleman from Missouri.
Never became law.
Gentleman from Missouri.
I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Georgia, Mr. Collins.
Stand by. House will be in order. How many minutes? For him. No. Gentleman from Georgia is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. You know, as a small businessman who started his business career under H.W. Bush and operated that business all the way through all the administrations up to and including the Biden administration, I can unequivocally say that the Trump tax policies and the Trump administration was the best for small business, period. That's why I joined the majority of the Americans across this country to vote to make those Trump policies permanent. You see, it doesn't matter. If you have 2 college degrees, no college degrees, brown, black, white, Trump's policies lifted all boats. That's why I encourage my colleagues to join me, pass this bill, and vote for Main Street. Thank you, and I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
I reserve, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman, time is reserved. Gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Louisiana, Leader Scalise.
Gentleman from Louisiana is recognized for 1 minute.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend from Missouri for his leadership in getting us to this point. So many other chairmen will talk about that too, but I want to rise in strong support, Mr. Speaker, of this one big, beautiful bill. This bill that's going to deliver on so many promises that the American people asked us to do for them. You know, we have elections in this country, and we had an election that had a lot of crystal clear messages sent in November. And we had a contrast, maybe one of the sharpest contrasts between two candidates for president. And if you read this bill, and maybe some of my friends on the other side haven't read it by some of the comments they've made, because you would think it's 2017 all over again when you listen to the things that they said, the same things they're saying tonight that they said in 2017, none of which turned out to be reality. And so they had an opportunity to make their case for raising taxes on the American people. In fact, their candidate for president was for a lot of the same things they're for tonight. Letting the Trump tax cuts expire to punish those middle class and low income workers who benefited the most from those tax cuts, benefited tremendously. President Trump said that he was going to lock those tax rates in, not giving all these tax breaks you're talking about to millionaires and billionaires, but in fact, to help the working families of this country who are struggling. They struggled after 4 years of the last administration. The weight of the failures of their policies that raised inflation, raised interest rates, made home ownership unachievable, made the ability to fill their own grocery carts unachievable. And President Trump said he would reverse it. How else did he say he was going to reverse it? President Trump said that we were going to produce more American energy. Now, the other side of the aisle has been very clear for years with an all-out assault on American energy. They've carried it out. They voted for it. They campaigned on it. And the voters rejected that false premise, that failed approach. Now, maybe they're upset that the voters said we want to produce more energy in America. But President Trump was crystal clear. You elect us, elect President Trump, elect a Republican House and Senate, and we will deliver for you. We will open up more American energy. From Anwar, Alaska to the Gulf of America. That's what he campaigned on. And maybe they're upset that he's actually delivering on those promises. And this bill delivers on those promises. A promise that will lower prices at the pump. When you go to the gas station, you'll be able to fill up your car. And so that's in this bill. But it also creates more jobs. Now, there are some people clearly who don't like that. Not just my friends on the other side of the aisle don't want to produce more American energy. You know who else doesn't want those provisions in this bill? Countries like Russia, countries like Iran, who have been making billions of dollars a month selling their energy on world markets because of the failed Biden policies. The policies that allowed them to enrich their countries and use that money for evil, to fund the war in Ukraine, to fund wars on terror around the world, terrorist organizations like Hamas and Hezbollah and the Houthis, funded by the billions of dollars a month that those countries got from selling their oil on world markets because America was shut down. Well, America will be shut down no more when this one big beautiful bill is passed into law, because we will be able to produce our own energy here in America. You know, my friend Chairman Smith worked incredibly hard to make sure that this bill delivers for the whole country to get economic growth again. you will see an American renaissance, a golden age in this country that we haven't seen in generations. Why would people vote against that? Who knows? Who knows? I mean, the press talks about the other side being a party in disarray, and maybe you're seeing on display right now why, when they are vocally opposed to these kind of policies that'll get the country back on track. Why do they say tax cuts for the millionaires, and the billionaires, when they know it's not true? I'll tell you why, Mr. Speaker. Because not only do they know that's not the case, but they know who benefits the most from this bill. You know, one of the great new provisions of this bill that President Trump campaigned on, that Chairman Smith made sure to deliver on, was no tax on tips. Now, the last time I checked, Elon Musk does not get paid in tips. But you know who does? A lot of hardworking people across this country. Any restaurant you go to, talk to the waiters and waitresses. Ask them about their hopes and dreams. Ask them about their families. And what would they do with just a little bit more money in their paycheck? Do you know, Mr. Speaker, that big provision that every Democrat is going to vote against? The average tip worker makes $32,000 a year. And every Democrat will vote no on that benefit while they hide behind the lie of the millionaires and the billionaires. Because they know that's not the case, but they also know if they're going to vote against every hardworking waiter and waitress who averages $32,000 a year, how do they get away with it? They've got to create some fake boogeyman that they can point to and say, gee whiz, look at the billionaire over there, as if class warfare, dividing Americans, is their way to try to get more power in Washington. How about we give people in America more power? Take it away from Washington. Empower the people in this country who have been struggling for too long. If you want to live the American dream, it can still exist. For a lot of people, they thought it was going away. President Trump ran and said, I will renew that promise. But it only happens if Congress delivers. Now, the other side will vote against it, every single one of them in lockstep. And they will root against the success of this bill. And then if it were to fail, they'd just go, look at that, the country's still in demise. Because they were against it every step of the way. We saw this play out, by the way, in the State of the Union just a few months ago, right here in this chamber. And America watched in shock. They want to see us come together. Can't we at least come together on things we agree on? And so there stood President Trump right at that podium, Mr. Speaker. And he talked about so many of the great things of this country, not partisan things, things that we used to all celebrate. Mr. Speaker, the President Trump, pointed over there to the balcony where not only was the presidential family seated, but they also had some special guests. He pointed to a 13-year-old boy who had just beaten cancer. You want to talk about something that can unite the whole country, that can bring us all together to say, yeah, you know, we might disagree on issues big and small, and that happens. That's America. But we can all celebrate a 13-year-old boy who just beat cancer, Mr. Speaker. And what happened when he said that? We rose up and applauded, as we all should have. But what else happened? The other side sat down, grumpy, angry. I don't know why. I wouldn't even say, Mr. Speaker, the House is not in order, Mr. Speaker.
House will be in order.
Mr. Speaker, I wouldn't say it was because that he beat cancer, but it was just because President Trump happened to point out that he beat cancer. We should not root for or against a person like that based on what President Trump says he's for. Just because the talking points of the party went out and said anything President Trump's for, be against. That's not a party platform. This country wants direction. President Trump ran on a direction, and their party did too. Wasn't like it wasn't laid out in the campaign. President Trump said he would secure America's border. That actually was the number one issue all across the country. I got to go around to a lot of parts of this country. You hear from a lot of different people. You see what their hopes and dreams are, but you'll also see from them, and they'll tell you what they want to see us come together and address. And it didn't matter what part of the country you went to. They all said, for goodness sake, can we secure America's border? Millions of people coming in illegally. Many of them really bad people. Gang members, violent people that were harming Americans. We saw it over and over again. Laken Riley murdered. We finally brought, by the way, the first bill President Trump signed into law was the Laken Riley Act. To say if you come here and harm an American citizen, you're gone, you're deported. And this bill allows for the deportation of violent criminals that come here illegally and harm American citizens. We should all support that. The other side doesn't. They'll fly to Venezuela and El Salvador, Mr. President, to try to get out of prison a gang member who beats his wife. But in this bill, it allows President Trump to continue securing America's border. He's done phenomenal work on his own through executive action, protecting America. But he needs money to build the wall. He needs money to let our Border Patrol agents have the ability to compete with the drug cartels of Mexico. It's embarrassing that today the drug cartels of Mexico, have better technology than America's Border Patrol agents. And we said, we're not going to allow that to happen again like the other side did. We're going to do something about it. We're going to give them those tools, night vision goggles, drones, other things, so that they can actually do the job that they came here to do. They put their lives on the line to keep us safe. The least we can do is allow them to have the ability to be safe themselves, to go home at night to their families while keeping our country safe. It's in this bill. We deliver on that promise, and so many others. We're making America competitive again in our military so that we can finally confront the threat that China poses militarily. We all talk about it. We all know what it means. But are we going to talk about it or do something about it? President Trump wants to do something about it. This Republican majority wants to do something about it. In this bill, we deliver on that promise. Everybody who votes no is saying no to that. Again, hide behind the millionaires and billionaires, but you're voting against strengthening America's military because that's in the bill. You're sure not talking about it on the other side, Mr. Speaker. We haven't heard them talking about it because they're about to vote against that. So let's be honest about it. But when you think about those benefits, you also got to recognize what a no vote means today. Because we've got two buttons. You press yes and you can press no. And if you vote no, you're voting against American energy. You're voting against securing America's border. You're voting against helping those middle-class families. You could run all the numbers. 22% tax increase on low and middle income families. We're not talking about the millionaires and billionaires. We're talking about a family making $70,000 a year combined, who's struggling to get by, would like to make a little bit more investment maybe in their kids' education, might want to take a family vacation, and this bill gives them the opportunity to do it. And it also gives every small business in America the opportunity to make investment in America again. 199A provision that's locked in permanently so there's no uncertainty, so we can grow more jobs in America. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for a lot of us here. That's what a yes vote gets. A no vote tells every small business in America that they will be at a competitive disadvantage with the big corporations. So you hear them rallying, Mr. Speaker, against the fat cats and the big corporations. Yet if they vote no, these are the facts. The big corporations, the global companies get a 21% rate, and your local small business would end up with a 43% rate. More than double. They would be non-competitive, your local small businesses, with the big corporations. We said that's not fair. We want to allow our small businesses to compete on a global stage with the big national corporations, and we do that in this bill. A no vote doesn't do that. And yes, we root out waste, fraud, and abuse, Mr. Speaker. waste, fraud, and abuse so that vital programs in America actually work better for the people who deserve them. Why would somebody come up here and defend hundreds of billions of dollars of waste, fraud, and abuse in Washington when hardworking families are barely struggling to get by and pay their taxes and are infuriated when they find out some of the waste that's going on up here and saying, when is somebody going to finally do something about the fraud so that I feel comfortable that if I'm funding my government, it's going to go to help the people who deserve it and not some 35-year-old kid who's fully able-bodied who's sitting in his mom's basement playing video games, getting over $40,000 in taxpayer-funded benefits while you're working 2 jobs, while the waiter or waitress averaging $32,000 a year is struggling to get by. We help them. That's who we're helping, those families who are struggling, and we will get this economy moving again. You can vote yes or you can vote no. I wish everybody would vote no. A yes vote gets America's economy moving again, allows President Trump to continue fighting for the hardworking families who elected him all across this country. Every swing state, majority of the American population want this kind of relief. So we're going to keep moving forward, Mr. Speaker. We're going to deliver for those families who deserve this help, who want to see America come back. And they know America can come back, but they know America's been held back for the last 4 years. The same people who have been telling you that President Biden's health was just fine are now telling you all these other things about millionaires and billionaires. We're going to get this right. This bill finally starts to right the ship of state. We all should come together and do that, Mr. Speaker. We've got so many great people who have worked so hard to get to this point, and we're still at the early stages. Let's send this bill over to the Senate, give them the opportunity to have their say as well. But ultimately, let's go deliver. Let's go deliver for that single mom who's working the night shift at a diner right now, who's going to have more money in her pocket because of this bill, who's maybe going to be able to send her kid to college because of this bill. We're going to deliver for those families. You could say yes or no. America's absolutely watching. America went to the polls in November and said, we want and are calling on Congress to provide this relief. We ran and said, we'll do something about it and we'll fix it. And we're actually following through, Mr. Speaker, on that promise made to the American people. President Trump is leading the way. President Trump is going to turn this country around, and this bill gives him the tools to do just that. I urge everybody to vote yes. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Massachusetts.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me say to my friend, the majority leader, everybody on this side was cheering for the success of that young man defeating cancer. The way we're going to defeat cancer is not to cut NIH. Let me yield the remainder of our time to the very capable and distinguished minority leader, Mr. Jeffries, for 1 minute.
Gentleman from New York, the minority leader, is recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Let me also thank the distinguished gentleman from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts who's done a tremendous job leading the Ways and Means Committee on our side, Congressman Richie Neal. I also want to thank Ranking Member Brendan Boyle, Ranking Member Jim McGovern, all of the members of the Ways and Means Committee, the Budget Committee, the Rules Committee, every single member of the House Democratic Caucus who has stood on this floor, stood before the Rules Committee, participated in markups on behalf of the American people, in defense of the American people. Mr. Speaker, I rise today in strong opposition to this reckless, regressive, and reprehensible GOP tax scam. This is one big, ugly bill that House Republicans are trying to jam down the throats of the American people under the cover of darkness. This legislation will not make life better for the American people. The GOP tax scam represents an assault on the economy, an assault on health care, an assault on nutritional assistance, an assault on tax fairness, and an assault on fiscal responsibility. There are more than 100 other reasons to vote against this one big, ugly bill that can be found by reading this more than 1,000-page document. Those reasons are too numerous to mention, but this legislation also undermines reproductive freedom, undermines the progress that we have made in combating the climate crisis, undermines gun safety, undermines the rule of law and the independence of the federal judiciary. It even undermines the ability of hard-working and law-abiding immigrant families to provide remittances to their loved ones who may just happen to live abroad. There are more than 100 different reasons to vote against the GOP tax scam. And in the days and the weeks and the months to come, all of those reasons will be exposed for the American people in each and every one of your districts. But this bill represents a failed promise. Last year, Donald Trump and House Republicans spent all of their time talking about their promise to lower the high cost of living in the United States of America. In fact, Donald Trump and Republicans promised that costs would go down on day one. We're now more than 120 days past the inauguration. Costs aren't going down, they're going up. Inflation is out of control. Insurance rates remain stubbornly high. Our Moody's rating, our credit rating has been downgraded. And you've got people losing confidence in this economy. Republicans are crashing this economy in real time and driving us toward a recession. But beyond that, costs are actually going up. The trade war that Donald Trump has recklessly launched, his tariff scheme, will raise the cost of goods and groceries and gas for everyday Americans. The Americans that you claimed you were going to help, but the Americans that you are clearly hurting. You've destabilized the business environment. Small businesses are at risk of closing. Farmers, small family farmers are in distress. Businesses can't invest. People are not hiring. You are actively crashing the economy, driving America toward a recession. You promise to lower costs on day one. Costs aren't going down, they are going up. Now, as House Democrats, we believe that we have to build an affordable economy for hardworking American taxpayers. We're committed to lowering housing costs and grocery costs and insurance costs and childcare costs and utility costs. America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world, there are far too many people living paycheck to paycheck, struggling to make ends meet. Here in this country, no American should find themselves in that situation. And you promised that you would do something about it. But things are not getting better, they are getting worse. We could have partnered together to try to find a bipartisan path toward building an affordable economy for hardworking American taxpayers. But you chose to go it alone, to try to drive your extreme right-wing policies down the throats of the American people. And that's what this one big ugly bill represents. Not simply a broken promise as it relates to your failures on the economy, and despite the gentleman from Louisiana trying to articulate all of the so-called successes that have taken place, we know that this presidency has already been a failure, filled with crisis and chaos, cruelty, and corruption. And the American people know it, which is why Donald Trump, at the 100-day mark, was the most unpopular president in American history. The American people understand. It's unfolding right before their eyes, no matter what kind of MAGA spin you try to put on the situation. And things are going to get worse. Why? Because of this big, ugly bill. Not simply an assault on the economy, a broken promise. It's an assault on the health care of the American people. You see, as Democrats, we believe in this country, health care is not simply a privilege. Health care is a right. And from Medicare to Medicaid to the passage of the Affordable Care Act and subsequently enhancing it, we've begun to move America to a place where every single person in this land could have access to the health care that they need to live a life of dignity and respect. At this moment in America, we have the lowest rate of uninsured people in our nation's history. But this GOP tax scam will reverse that with this assault on health care, the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. And here's what it will mean for the American people. Children will get hurt. Women will get hurt. Older Americans who rely on Medicaid for nursing home care and for home care will get hurt. People with disabilities who rely on Medicaid to survive will get hurt. Hospitals in your districts will close. Nursing homes will shut down. And people will die. That's not hype. That's not hyperbole. That's not a hypothetical. The people that you all represent have been writing to us to make that clear. Thousands of people who've written to us, everyday Americans, have made that clear. And let me just present a few of those stories into the record. I have type 1 diabetes and was diagnosed when I was 7 years old. I've had jobs with private insurance in the past, but I lost my job during the pandemic. With childcare becoming a major challenge, it made more sense for me to stay home with the kids, but that also meant losing my health benefits. Right now, we're all on Medicaid. It's crucial for me to stay alive and healthy. I need insulin and supplies to manage my diabetes every single day. Without it, I could die. That's Shauna, who lives in Arizona's 6th congressional district. My youngest son has leukemia. He was a self-employed handyman, and therefore he didn't have sufficient insurance. When the cancer became more debilitating, he could no longer work. He has undergone radiation, stem cell transplant, and then more radiation. He is still fighting the cancer, and without Medicaid and the fine physicians, he would surely die. That's Greg, who lives in the 8th congressional district of Colorado. As a cancer survivor with chronic illnesses, I rely heavily on Medicaid. and food stamps to get by. Without these essential programs, people like me would suffer. I'm currently taking expensive medication to stay in remission, but my condition and the side effects of my treatment make it impossible for me to work. Unfortunately, my work history also disqualifies me from receiving Social Security benefits. I'm not alone in my dependence on these Medicaid and food stamps benefits. Children, elders, and many others who are sick or struggling also rely on them to survive. I urge you to do the right thing for the people you represent. Without food stamps and Medicaid, the consequences would be painful and even deadly. That's Jalissa, who had a message for her representative in Pennsylvania's 8th Congressional District. But we're here to say, as House Democrats, to Shauna, to Greg, and to Jalissa, that if your representatives won't fight for you, we will. We will. We will. If they won't fight for you, we will fight for you. For your health care, for your decency, for your well-being, for your grace, and for your dignity. Now, in addition to visiting the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, that's not enough for the MAGA extremists. CBO has independently confirmed that this one big, ugly bill will also set in motion a $490 billion cut to Medicare in this country. Now, unfortunately, that should come as no surprise, because we know that our Republican colleagues for decades have been trying to attack Social Security, as they're doing right now, not necessarily in this bill. Why? Because the 1974 Budget Control Act prevents you from doing it. But you've been going after Social Security for a long time, going after Medicare for a long time, and Elon Musk, who seems to function as your puppet master, has made clear his intentions, which you just follow as if you work for him. Elon Musk wants to take a chainsaw to Social Security, a chainsaw to Medicare, as you're doing in this bill, a chainsaw to Medicaid, as you're doing in this bill. Here's our message to you and the American people: no matter how long it takes, House Democrats are going to take a chainsaw to Project 2025, because it's not in the best interest of the American people. And what this bill represents is your effort to try to put into law Project 2025. You acted like you didn't know anything about it. This is why you have no credibility right now. You spent all of last year lying to the American people, saying to them that you were going to lower the high cost of living. In fact, you're doing the exact opposite. At the same period of time, you acted like you knew nothing about Project 2025, and this bill is an effort to try to implement it into law. So you mentioned credibility issues. I think it exists on the right side of this chamber. Now, not only have you gone after Medicaid, not only have you gone after Medicare, in this In this,
You are to direct your comments to the chair.
Mr. Speaker, you know what's interesting is that every time I've come on this floor, I can use sharp language. He can use sharp language. You choose to admonish me. I don't work for you, sir. I work for the American people.
I understand. House will be in order. As I said, Mr. Leader, we've been very patient. Just listen to the majority leader of the other side who directed all of his comments to the chair. It is important for the decorum of the institution for you to do the same. You may proceed.
We can continue this.
You may proceed.
And every time I'm interrupted, that's going to add another 15 minutes to my remarks.
Fair enough.
Mr. Speaker. So what we've seen is the largest cut to Medicaid in American history, an effort to devastate Medicare. And of course, what this bill also does is strip away some of the coverage provided by the Affordable Care Act. Millions of people will lose their coverage as a result of this GOP tax scam. And so when you aggregate the assault on healthcare that's taking place, what we're likely to see is at least 13.7 million people are going to lose their health care in the United States of America. That's what we're fighting for. That's why we're a no, amongst several other reasons, on this bill. It's an assault on the economy, an assault on health care. It's also an assault on nutritional assistance. Now, in the 1960s, the American people were shaken up and disturbed by images that they saw after some investigations exposed the conditions of some people in America who were dealing with intense hunger in rural America, in under-resourced communities, in communities of color. Images of children with distended bellies, families rummaging through garbage in order to find food so they wouldn't starve. That's what eventually led to the creation of what is now the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program. Because the American people concluded that in this great country, not a single child should ever go hungry. That's our position. Apparently, it's not the position of my Republican colleagues. Because in this bill, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutritional Assistance Program, will experience more than $300 billion in cuts, the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history. Literally, Mr. Speaker, Republicans are taking food out of the mouths of children, disabled Americans, veterans, and older Americans. That is another reason why we are strongly opposed to this bill. This is the United States of America, the wealthiest country in the history of the world. It is indecent to rip food out of the mouths of children and everyday Americans. It is indecent. And to make matters worse, we know that as a result of this bill, according to an analysis from the Urban Institute, there are 18 million children in this country who are at risk of losing school meals. Decade after decade after decade in America, we've made great progress. That progress, as it relates to alleviating hunger and food insecurity, is now at risk of being rolled back. And one of the excuses that I'm sure we'll hear from the speaker of this institution is that this one big ugly bill is all about waste, fraud, and abuse. It's interesting because month after month after month, we continue to hear that phrase. And let's be clear, as Democrats, we believe in trying to make sure that federal taxpayer dollars are spent in an efficient and an effective way. We're all for that. But that's not what's being done in this bill. No evidence of waste, fraud, and abuse has been presented in a compelling way. In fact, you know what's interesting? You're talking about taking away nutritional benefits that amount to $2 per meal, $6 per day. At the same time, when Elon Musk and his federal contracts are worth $8 million a day. If you're trying to find waste, fraud, and abuse, I have a suggestion. Start right there. Start right there. Don't take food from the mouths of our children. Start right there. And so, it's one big ugly bill. It's GOP tax scam. It's reckless Republican budget. It's an assault on the economy. It's an assault on health care. It's an assault on nutritional benefits. It's also an assault on tax fairness. I mean, here's the thing, that it's the largest cut to health care in American history, coupled by the largest cut to nutritional assistance in American history, in order to enact the largest tax breaks for billionaires in American history. That's unacceptable, that's unconscionable, and that's un-American. That's un-American. Because my Republican colleagues promised that they would actually focus their efforts on trying to make life better for everyday Americans. But disproportionately, the benefits of this bill, as confirmed by independent observers, don't go to those who may be at the lower end of the socioeconomic spectrum. They actually go disproportionately to those at the highest end of the economic spectrum. CBO analysis requested by Congressman Boyle and myself just confirmed that. Not hype, not hyperbole, not a hypothetical. It's what will happen if this one big ugly bill became law. And so it's an assault on tax fairness. And of course, that's coupled with the assault on fiscal responsibility. It's ironic to me that many of my colleagues on the other side of the aisle claim to be the party of fiscal responsibility. But as Richie Neal has often eloquently articulated, That's not what the record shows. The record shows something very different. And this fiscal irresponsibility that comes from the other side of the aisle is actually connected to the obsession with massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. We've seen this rinse and repeat scenario play itself out over and over and over again. President Reagan comes into office, and what is his signature domestic priority? His signature domestic priority, massive tax cuts for the super wealthy. And as a result, he escalates the debt and the deficit. Those policies, of course, are continued by his successor, President George H.W. Bush. But then President Clinton takes office, and in his 8 years, turns a deficit into a budget surplus. That's fiscal responsibility. And then after 8 years in office, President Clinton is replaced by President George W. Bush, who proceeds to follow the same playbook. You used to call it trickle-down economics. The American people aren't buying it because they figured out what trickle-down economics means. We may get a trickle, but we're guaranteed to stay down. And that's what's happened over and over and over again. So President Bush comes into office, and what does he do? Massive tax cuts for the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-connected. The 2001 tax cuts, the 2003 tax cuts turned a budget surplus into a massive deficit, and then further exacerbated the problem with a failed war in Iraq and a failed war in Afghanistan, asleep at the switch as it related to the economy, which resulted in the Great Recession. So President Obama takes office to once again demonstrate what fiscal responsibility is all about. And in 8 years, takes the deficit that he inherited of $1.5 trillion and cuts it by $1 trillion, notwithstanding the economic mess that he inherited, having to dig the country out of the Great Recession. And then, of course, after 8 years of President Obama, which brings us to the current administration in its first term, as my colleague from Louisiana talked about, what's your signature legislative accomplishment? The 2017 version of the GOP tax scam, where by some estimates, 83% of the benefits were set in motion for the wealthiest 1%, and you borrowed more than $2 trillion to do it. Once again, exploding the debt and the deficit in the United States of America. President Biden comes into office in his first 2 years, notwithstanding all of the signature accomplishments, many of which did have some bipartisan support, particularly in the Senate. Significant accomplishments led by President Biden. Speaker Pelosi, Democrats in the House, partnering with our colleagues in the Senate, notwithstanding all of those accomplishments, reduces the deficit in his first 2 years by $1.7 trillion. That's what fiscal responsibility looks like. So we're not going to be lectured on this issue. And then my colleagues have the nerve to talk about fiscal responsibility, to try to pass a bill that disproportionately benefits their billionaire donors like Elon Musk, and borrows, will add to the debt more than $5 trillion. That's an assault on fiscal responsibility. That is forcing our children and our grandchildren, all of them, to shoulder an unnecessary burden that will limit their ability to fully experience the American dream. And so that's why we oppose this bill. An assault on the economy, an assault on health care, an assault on nutritional assistance, including on our veterans, an assault on tax fairness, and an assault on fiscal responsibility. As I close, let me make one other observation. I do believe that there are people of faith on both sides of this chamber. Authentically, people of faith on both sides of this chamber. I'm not one to question anyone's faith. But I do think we have to ask the question, particularly when you study the gospel, and the gospel in particular of Matthew 25 and 35 through 40, where Jesus talks about the importance of standing up for the least, the lost, the left behind, the poor, the sick, the afflicted, the homeless, the people who are confined, strangers in a foreign land. That when you know the gospel, when you are charged with trying to live the gospel, it cannot be the case that one goes to synagogue, or one goes to the mosque, or one goes to church, as I do, but one goes to church to pray on Sunday and then comes to Washington, D.C. to pray on the American people the rest of the week. P-R-E-Y. Can't pray on the poor, pray on the sick, pray on the afflicted, pray on our children, pray on people with disabilities, pray on our veterans who serve this country, and project that that is consistent with the faith that I at least know, anchored in Matthew 25 and 35. So, Mr. Speaker, I think this, in some ways, is a sad day here for this institution. James Madison, one of our great thinkers, I believe it was in Federalist 51, talks about Congress at its best should function as a rival to the executive branch, serve as a check and balance on the out-of-control impulses of an executive that may emerge from time to time. Congress, according to James Madison, at its best, would serve as a rival to the executive branch. But unfortunately, our House Republican colleagues haven't followed the vision of this Madisonian version of democracy, because you have consistently proven to be nothing more than a rubber stamp for Donald Trump's extreme agenda. And the American people are paying attention. The American people are paying attention. So I think that when the story is told of the 119th Congress, when the votes are ultimately cast on that first Tuesday in November next year, that this day may very well turn out to be the day that House Republicans lost control of the United States House of Representatives. Because the American people are paying attention. They are smarter than you think. and they know when they are being hurt. They know when their interests are not being served. And they know when they have been lied to and deceived. You see, they know that Congress was meant to be a separate and co-equal branch of government. We don't work for President Trump. We don't work for J.D. Vance. We don't work for Elon Musk. We work for the American people. That's what House Democrats are all about. And because we work for the American people, we will continue to stand up for an economy that's affordable and makes life better for hardworking American taxpayers. Will stand up for Social Security, stand up for Medicare, stand up for Medicaid, stand up for nutritional assistance, stand up for our children, stand up for our veterans, stand up for our seniors, stand up for our families, stand up for the American way of life. That's what House Democrats will continue to do. We will stand up today, stand up tomorrow, stand up this week, stand up next week, stand up this month, stand up next month, stand up this year, stand up next year, stand up at all times until we end this national nightmare and restore the American dream for every single person in this great land from sea to shining sea. Vote no. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Missouri.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Democrat leader is mistaken. We aren't currently in the dead of night. We are voting for the one big, beautiful bill.
House to be in order.
We are voting for the one big, beautiful bill first thing in the morning because the relief for working families simply can't wait and will work until the job's done. And we're going to do that. I am pleased to yield 1 minute to the gentleman from Louisiana, our Speaker, the Speaker of the House, Mr. Mike Johnson.
The gentleman from Louisiana, the Speaker of the House, is recognized for 1 minute.
After that very long and wandering speech, my friend, and after a long week and a long night and countless hours of work over the past year, a lot of prayer and a lot of teamwork, my friends, it quite literally is again morning in America, isn't it? All right, all right. And after 4 long years of President Biden's failures, President Trump's America First agenda is finally here, and we are advancing that today. What we're going to do here this morning is truly historic, and it will make all the difference in the daily lives of hardworking Americans. The Dallas waitress pulling overtime, the Detroit mom counting bills late at night, the Kentucky coal miner waiting on his second chance. These are the forgotten men and women of our country that we are all called here to serve. And the one big, beautiful bill will deliver for those people. It revives our economy. It will deliver historic tax relief. It will make the largest investment in our border security in a generation. It will unleash affordable American energy again, restore common sense to government, secure generational savings, and strengthen our national defense, while it also strengthens our essential programs like Medicaid for the people who need it the most. That's what we're doing with the One Big Beautiful Bill. To put it simply, this bill gets Americans back to winning again, and it's been a long time coming. This One Big Beautiful Bill is the most consequential legislation that any party has ever passed, certainly under a majority this thin. Legislation of this magnitude is truly nation-shaping and life-changing. It's the kind of transformational change that future generations will study one day. They'll look back at this day as a turning point in American history. And it's exactly what we were sent here to do. Let the record show that when the House Democrats vote in a few moments, this is what they'll be voting for. Their vote will show that they are apparently for the largest tax increase in the history of our country. They will be voting for, when they vote against this bill, waste, fraud, and abuse. They will be voting against safer communities, American energy dominance, and American strength on the world stage. And today wouldn't be possible without the leadership of arguably the most powerful and the most successful and the most respected president in the modern era of the United States. Our Democrat colleagues mock the objective truth. We were delivered unified government, my friends, in November. The White House, the Senate, and the House were delivered to the party on this side of the aisle. So you can laugh all you want, all right? None of this would be possible without the leadership of the 45th and the 47th President of the United States, Donald J. Trump. And it would not be possible without the really hard work of the men and women on this side of the aisle. I just want to name our chairman of our House committees that produced and did all the hard work to produce the big, beautiful bill. Scripture says we give honor where honor's due, Mr. Leader. And we're going to do that here quickly. Chairman G.T. Thompson of the Agriculture Committee. Chairman Mike Rogers of the Armed Services Committee. Chairman Jody Arrington of the Budget Committee. Chairman Tim Walberg, Education and Workforce Committee. Chairman Brett Guthrie, Energy and Commerce Committee. Chairman French Hill, Financial Services Committee. Chairman Mark Green, Homeland Security Committee. Chairman Jim Jordan, Judiciary Committee. Chairman Bruce Westerman, Natural Resources Committee. Chairman James Comer, Oversight and Accountability Committee. Chairman Sam Graves, Transportation and Infrastructure. Chairman Jason Smith, Ways and Means Committee. And I want to make special mention of Chairwoman Virginia Fox of the Rules Committee, who, by my count, sat in that chair and led that Rules Committee for almost, seemed like 2 straight days, and I think she took 2 short breaks. She's the Iron Lady of the House, and I'm so grateful for all their hard work. See, the beauty of what we produced with the One Big Beautiful Bill over here is that this was a team effort. This was men and women who were elected to come here, the duly elected representatives of the people back home. They rolled up their sleeves. They got down in the trenches. We began this effort over a year ago. It was actually March of last year, because we anticipated and we believed that we would be delivered unified government, that we would have a Republican leader in the White House, Donald J. Trump, that we would have the Senate and the House, that we would have that moment of opportunity. And so we planned and we worked and we locked arms together as a team, and we have delivered this against all odds. The media has tried to divide us. They've written our eulogy about 10 times. And you know what? Sometimes it's good to be underestimated, isn't it? But we got this done, and I'm so proud of the work of every member of this House Republican Conference who worked in their committees. Every single member had a say in this. Every single constituent. The millions of people that are represented here have their voices and their interests reflected, because we did this together as a team, and it's quite an achievement. I just want to say that all that tireless work has led to the hard work of crafting this legislation, and we've been ready since day one to deliver on this agenda. Unified control of government is a rare mandate. It doesn't happen very often. It's happened just 3 times for our party in the last half century. We do not take it for granted. And we are delivering on that mandate here today. The American people gave us a mandate in November. They sent a message with their vote. They gave this side of the aisle the power, and we're going to use it to make their lives better. What we're achieving here today is nothing short of historic, and that's true. House Republicans are getting it done again. In the Republican Party, see, we believe in a simple principle. We believe that America really is a shining city on a hill. Ronald Reagan used to talk about that. He was referencing Scripture. He understood that America is exceptional. He understood that, as it says right there above the speaker's rostrum, our national motto, that we trust in God. And God is our trust. These are the things that make our nation exceptional. And the people of our country, they deserve better. We've been working hard to deliver so that the people of our country see this again as a shining city on a hill, and that people around the world see us for who we should be. One thing that we can all agree on both sides of the aisle is that a strong America is good for everybody all around the world. All of us together, regardless of party, we're called here to stand together and defend those freedoms and to defend those foundations that made us the greatest nation in the history of the world. All of us have to look and recognize that the shine has not been on that city in a while. We're here to restore it. And this piece of legislation, as large as it is and as historic as it is, will do that very thing. Now, look, we're accomplishing a big thing here today, but we know this isn't the end of the road just yet. We've been working closely with Leader Thune and our Senate colleagues, the Senate Republicans, to get this done and delivered to the president's desk by our Independence Day. That's July 4th. Today proves that we can do that, and we will do that. And it doesn't matter how much the media doubts this or how much the Democrats, give us their narratives. Doesn't matter how long the speeches are. It doesn't change the facts. We're delivering, and we're doing it in a big way. So to our friends in the Senate, I would just say the president is waiting with his pen. The American people are waiting for this relief. They are waiting for these life-changing results, and we are going to finish this job. This is a historic moment that we will be talking to our children and our grandchildren about, and everyone will remember. America's back. I yield back.
Gentleman from Massachusetts with 2 minutes remaining.
I yield back.
Gentleman yields back his time. Gentleman from Missouri with 2 minutes remaining.
I yield back.
Gentleman from Missouri yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 436, the previous question is ordered on the bill as amended. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Ayes have it. Third reading.
A bill to provide for reconciliation pursuant to Title II of House Concurrent Resolution 14.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts seek recognition?
I ask for a recorded vote, Mr. Speaker. Okay.
I'm sorry. For what purpose does the gentlelady from Massachusetts seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Han of Massachusetts moves to recommit the bill H.R. 1 to the Committee on the Budget.
Pursuant to Clause 2B of Rule 19, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. Opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentlelady from
Mr. Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
Yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of H.R. 1 if ordered, and the motion to suspend the rules and pass H.R. 1701 if ordered. This is a 15-minute vote. Have all members voted? Did any member wish to change the vote? On this vote, the yeas are 212, the nays are 216. The motion is not adopted. The question is on passage of the bill. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, no. No. The ayes have it. The gentleman from Massachusetts.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. Sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic devices. It's a 5-minute vote.
On this vote, the yeas are 215, the nays are 214, with one answering present. The bill is passed.
USA, USA.
Without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid on the table.
Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 1701, which the clerk will report by title.
H.R. 1701, a bill to require the Secretary of Defense of the Secretary of State to monitor efforts by the People's Republic of China to build or buy strategic foreign ports and for other purposes.
Will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill? So many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules. The House. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on suspending the rules and passing H.R. 1969 as amended, which the clerk will report by title.
Union Calendar Number 76, H.R. 1969, a bill to amend and reauthorize the Staff Sergeant Parker Gordon Fox Suicide Prevention Grant Program of the Department of Veterans Affairs.
The question is, will the House suspend the rules and pass the bill as amended? So many as are in favor say aye. Those opposed, no. In the opinion of the chair, 2/3 being in the affirmative, the rules are suspended. The bill is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid on the table.